Hello and welcome to the latest briefing by Ian Henry of AutoAnalysis on the European car and light commercial vehicle production outlook. A quick look at the key issues that we need to consider in looking at vehicle production in Europe. Clearly there are still worries about the economic and financial recovery, and there are many concerns amongst analysts regarding the state of the PIGS economies, that's Portugal, Italy, Greece and Spain. And here in the UK in particular, the fear of a double-dip recession remains. Those worries aside, it does seem as though action by the EU finance ministers, the ECB and the IMF has stabilised the situation across Europe. The scrappage schemes which have prevailed across Europe for all of 2009 have now come to an end, and this has led to a significant short-term fall in German sales, but in most other European markets sales have held up well. Turning to the question of production overcapacity, this remains a serious problem. The vehicle manufacturers have historically been reluctant to take the politically sensitive decision and close plants. They prefer to cut shifts and slow down line speeds. There has been some change in this, however, with GM closing the Antwerp plant and Fiat closing the Terminate Maresi plant next year, but elsewhere decisions are being delayed. We understand that Jaguar Land Rover is still reviewing whether it will close a UK plant. GM is still optimistically looking for a solution to save the Luton van plant, and Renault's Spanish plants have been given new models. And very recently, PSA's Madrid plant, which we have identified as vulnerable and could be closed, is likely now to be saved by producing a range of EVs for PSA. Turning now to the production volumes, we saw a recovery in production which started in Q1, and this has continued into the current quarter. And the situation at most VMs has been boosted by their increasing financial strength. A number of new models, particularly at Ford, Opel, Volkswagen, Audi, Nissan and Hyundai, are doing much better than previously expected. There's also been increased production in smaller vehicles, EVs now starting, and hybrids. We now think that the market volume in 2013 will be greater than that in 2007. In other words, we're now predicting the recovery to be a year ahead of schedule. This is partly driven by a strong new model pipeline from the car companies and the car companies themselves restocking their distribution channels. 2010 itself will be up on 2009. We now project this to be approximately 17.7 million versus 16.1 million a year ago. There'll be a further modest recovery in 2011 to 18.2 million, but we really see the major recovery in production starting in 2012. If we now turn to the individual car companies themselves, looking at BMW and Daimler, the two main premium brands in Germany, BMW has seen its first 5-month sales in 2010 up over 13% globally, and it's on target to meet a series of very tough financial goals by 2012. It has a very powerful new model program which is being accelerated, and it's also increasing the proportion of small cars and EVs in its range. At Daimler, parent company Mercedes and Smart, there is also a very strong financial performance to be expected in 2010. Indeed, it's on target to make €4 billion profit versus a loss in 2009. Here too, there's a reorientation to small cars, which will be reinforced by the joint venture with Renault, which will be at the heart of the new Mercedes Smart strategy. But at Daimler, we shouldn't forget that there will be a major push into new sports cars. Looking at three of the volume manufacturers, Fiat, Ford and GM, at Fiat we can see the integration with Chrysler accelerating. Fiat management is still in negotiations with the unions regarding moving production from Poland to Italy, but it has a very ambitious and extensive new model and platform sharing program in place. We think that the targets for Alfa and Lancia seem rather ambitious, and they certainly will require North American sales to be fulfilled. At Ford, the main news still concerns the imminent sale of Volvo to Geely, for which the due diligence process is proceeding. And there's been an interesting development with Valencia becoming the centre of European hybrid production from 2012. Ford's position is furthermore underpinned by the strong sales of the new Fiesta. At GM, there was major news in the last few weeks when the German government declined GM's loan applications to support the restructuring of the company in Europe. As a result of that, GM has decided to withdraw all its requests for funding from all European governments and will fund the restructuring of its European operations itself. It has underpinned its commitment to the Bochum plant, which some people have questioned about its long-term future, but uncertainty remains regarding Luton. We know that Antwerp will close by the end of 2010 unless a new investor is found. Turning to the two French companies, there is good news here too, especially regarding their financial performance. PSA is restructuring itself and it's aiming to repay the government loans it received last year early. It's deepening its cooperation with Mitsubishi, but it has said there will be no more cooperation with BMW beyond the existing alliance in 4-cylinder petrol engines. Positive news at PSA concerns the possibility that the Madrid plant will make electric vehicles, and the Citroën premium brand, the DS range, is being more successful than anticipated. At Renault, Nissan and Dacia, the commitment to electric vehicles is intensifying, and here too financial performance is improving. Like PSA, Renault will repay French government loans earlier than planned. The recently announced joint venture with Daimler will be interesting and very important in terms of Renault's strategy, and it is said there will be a new mid-term plan which will be announced in Q3. Turning now to Tata, Toyota and Volkswagen. Tata, the parent company of Jaguar and Land Rover, is reviewing its plans to close a UK plant following a recent upturn, particularly in Land Rover sales. It's accelerating the new model program at Land Rover, with more Range Rover branded products likely to be introduced and more Jaguar variants also expected. There will also be production of a Land Rover model in China within the next 3 to 5 years, and one can also expect production in India as well, given its parentage. Toyota is still suffering from major recall problems, and this is affecting the company globally. The good news in the UK has been the start of the production of the Auris hybrid vehicle recently, and it now also appears that the Yaris hybrid will go into production in France when the new model comes on stream. The Volkswagen Group is doing very well indeed. Group sales are rising around the world, and investment continues to be made in a range of new models and electric vehicles and production-making capacity. Losses, however, have mounted at SEAT, and the Volkswagen Group has given SEAT 5 years to sort itself out. Skoda is reorganising its production footprint, moving the rooms to production and adding shifts for a couple of other models. And Skoda too is becoming more and more profitable. Across the Volkswagen Group, revenue was up nearly 25% in Q1. The first 5 months of the year saw a rise of 18% in unit sales across the globe. In conclusion, the new model programs from the car companies have certainly boosted 2010 production volumes, and we see this continuing. Our outlook now assumes also there will be no double-dip recession. Overcapacity issues have not been addressed and decisions have been delayed, but in general, the new model programs, exports beyond Europe and the small car switch at many car companies will underpin growth. In conclusion, looking at the individual VMs, we need to remember that BMW and Daimler are switching their focus to more and more small cars, and they're adding electric vehicles. And Daimler's joint venture with Renault is particularly important in this regard. Fiat continues to cut jobs, but it is bringing production back from Poland to Italy, where it still has union problems. Ford has finally agreed to sell Volvo, subject to legal formalities. This should be completed in Q3. GM is adding shifts, and this also reinforces its commitment to the previously vulnerable Bochum plant. PSA is now growing its EV business both alone and with Mitsubishi, and following Renault in this regard. And both French companies, PSA and Renault, have started to repay the government loans early. Toyota is still facing a great deal of uncertainty following the recall crisis. Volkswagen is performing strongly, but it has yet to address the SEAT problems. Its global growth will, however, give it time to solve this problem child. All the information referred to here and more can be found in the latest edition of the European Car and LCV Production Outlook. This report is published bi-monthly, and each report contains the latest industry developments, market data and production outlook across Europe. To order your free copy of the Executive Summary, you can click on this page to download it, and the full report is also available to download from the SMMT Member Services website. It's free to SMMT members and available for £4,000 to non-members.